Hey, Aisala, how are you today?
I am really good. I actually got to interact with you this week, so that was delightful.
Yeah, I've got a few days in Colorado. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, but it's good to land for a moment and get some face-to-face time with you.
It's been really wonderful. Well, and the first place you started was I'm gonna say this, I think correctly, Economic Futures Conference, which I'd never
Economic
heard of.
Futures for Indigenous Sustainability, and it was their very first
Oh, okay.
conference and this was out in San Francisco. I was impressed. I mean, the first day I wondered, well, what was my purpose in being invited here? Um, and Jason Jacobs, our Maori brother from our board, he was the one who decided to let me know about this and said, "I think you need to be there." So there were a number of Maori people who were representing, and then, as you know, sadly, you did not come, but we had Lori Rich, our grant writer, joined us, and then Blake Kent as well. Blake's been organizational manager for us over the years, and so he joined from DC. Lori came in from Hawaii, and I maybe 250, 300 people attended.
Wow.
It was very impressive for a first go around in particular. And people were there everywhere, like I said, from New Zealand to Jakarta to you know,
Wow.
lots of Canadian tribes were represented.
It's one of those things that just brings me joy and hope because the narrative that we have, right, is there's just one way to be successful. And what I see is, and anytime you do any actual interaction and looking, you find, oh, there's lots of ways. And
Mhm.
there's lots of people working on economic systems that are functional, not just for whoever is doing the activity or the business, but also for the communities, for the people, for the customers, and for the planet. And I think that narrative it's a very powerful one that we need to continue to amplify and share. That if you aren't happy with how things are, it isn't do this or give up. It's do this or find the other options. There are so
Mhm.
many. And when you start opening those doors, you will find so many people, one, that are delightful. That's been one of my joys of the whole thing. You get to work and engage with really lovely humans, and you can actually really thrive as a human and in a community and also create something powerful or successful. It just doesn't have to be at the cost of other people on the planet. What
It's
a
amazing.
concept.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I ended up speaking pretty much on this topic the following week after San Francisco. It was the Indigenous Cannabis Association's, excuse me, Indigenous Cannabis Association's Policy Summit in DC. And one of the things I spoke about was we have choices, right? And
Yeah.
so one path in business could be the extractive path. It could be the more capitalistic path. It could be the Western way of doing business, which is more individually focused, not so much the community. The environment may be considered, but that is not the priority. The financial bottom line is the priority. Where if you go to more of the indigenous way of practicing business, it's more of regenerative. It is more of I refer to it as the potlatch. The potlatch um, is an indigenous way of you come together. There is a gathering of some sort, and the wealthiest person in the room is going to be the one who's given away the most.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
about so I have a commitment and I have the privilege of being able to support my community in whatever way that looks like. And so therein lies the difference between the Western and more of an indigenous way. And it doesn't matter, and when I say indigenous, it doesn't matter where in the world that is. That is more of the practices.
Yeah.
So wealth looks very different in communities that do this kind of practice as opposed to, you know, it's more about the individual. The one person has got the finances and the controls over everyone. Um,
Hmm. Well, it's hoarding is a sickness in a lot of these communities. I would say it's also a sickness in ours, but we haven't identified it as such. And it's something that I think about where if you live in a system, in a community for real, where you are genuinely aware that you rely on each other, then hoarding stops the ability for things to flow properly, because everybody has up times and down times. Whereas if you allow things to flow, then and trust that, then when you're in a place of need or wanting to create or something, then it comes to you. And then when you have the excess, or that you offer it back, and it's you don't have to try and hoard it all to protect your future, because we're in a shared future and a shared present. And it's I do think the individualistic piece of it, and the isolation and the lack of trust that we are currently experiencing, really creates some challenges to us understanding this. So I feel like we're really lucky that we have people who are coming from Indigenous practices who have a lot of experience with being very functional and successful in this approach, can teach us, and hopefully we'll learn. I mean, that's the part too. But we have the option to learn, and that's pretty great.
We have to be open to learning.
Yeah.
We have to have our ears and our hearts truly open to it.
Yeah.
I'm excited about today's talk.
I am too.
Chenae Bullock, I think she's going to address a lot of these issues. So I'm excited that Mary Jane was able to grab a hold of her, and Chenae said yes to joining us today.
Yeah, we're really lucky, and she has a lot of functional practice, from what I can tell, in her business, in exactly this, and then also some of these opportunities we have to learn and grow collectively.
Welcome back to Gaia Gossip, the podcast that explores the intersection of ecological impact, Indigenous wisdom, and modern technology with a heart of community connection. Join us as we dive into deep conversations about sustainability, innovation, and the preservation of our Mother Earth. I'm your host, Mary Jane Oatman, and I'm joining you today from the ancestral homelands of my people in modern-day Idaho, in the ancestral homelands of the Nimipu. And in today's episode, I'm really excited to be just having a conversation about rest and reset, so that we can do the resilient work that we do on behalf of our communities, with a very special guest of mine. And I'm very honored to introduce the founder and guiding light behind Moskehtu Consulting, Chenae Bullock. Chenae is a member of the Shinnecock Nation, and I'm so honored to know her as a sister, and to be witness and watching her work as a matriarch. And so I just want to give a little bit of background, but before we get into that, I wanted to send a special shout out and amazing gratitude to Alicia Fall, the founder of her Many Voices Foundation, as well as a congratulations on her recent award as the Ally of the Year for the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association at the recent Washington, D.C. policy conference. Her Many Voices Foundation is absolutely bringing light to the Indigenous global movement, specifically the work that our matriarchs are doing. So to be able to have Chenae as a guest today on this show is really special for me, because my first time ever meeting her was very much while we were both serving in a very much male-dominated world, and homegirl was owning it. She was out there doing it, and I was very honored to be able to feature her in one of our first issues of Tribal Hemp and Cannabis Magazine. And the article was featured a young woman of color leading a team of men. And she was blazing trails and doing some amazing things then. And then another feature of our lovely Chenae Bullock in Tribal Hemp and Cannabis Magazine. Resilience, roots, story, the winter reset, how we can prepare for the regeneration through that rest. All things are on the table today with this conversation, but Chenae, it is an extreme honor, privilege to welcome you to Gaia Gossip as we transition into that winter season of storytelling, as we reflect on the year behind us as we prepare, not just for the year to come, but in the work that we do, the community healing for the next 7 generations. But I just wanted to kick it off by just asking a question. What is your favorite part about winter? Oh no.
It says she just joined, which means even though we see her, she wasn't here. I'm not
Yes.
sure.
Would I be able to just ask her the question with her
She's
being
in twice, so I'm not sure what's going on. I'm gonna.
I can hear you all.
Okay.
Yeah, that's so weird.
It's really weird. I don't know if it's something with the streaming. I'm not sure, but am I clear?
Yeah.
Okay. You're clear too.
Yeah.
You were just getting ready to introduce me. You were introducing me, right? I think that's what
Yeah, I was
hearing.
introducing you, and then I asked you the question, what is your favorite part about winter?
That's the part I didn't hear.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction, and it's truly an honor to I guess just be submerged around all this femininity. Just the title itself, her Many Voices Foundation, that's just really powerful. And as you mentioned, like, we both met during a time where we were both working in a very male dominated industry. But we were still able to keep that, strong sisterhood. So it's such an honor to be here with you. Um, my favorite part about winter is the stillness. um, I think sometimes stillness is a lot for people to take on because, you have to really sit with yourself a lot. And sometimes having to sit with yourself can be very hard, because there might be some things that, you could have avoided or whatnot, but there's such beauty in that, because there's so much renewal that comes out of that. So I really look forward to, I don't want to say harsh winter, but a still winter. I'm preparing for that now, just sort of trying to nest, trying to get things like, ready and situated, gathering my medicines, starting to jot down the type of projects that I want to work on, whether they're research projects, or just, projects with my hands, working on traditional things for our communities. Um, I really enjoy that winter time, and winter time also is like, our traditions talk about storytelling, so really sitting and visiting or even virtually catching up with people because things start to slow down for them too. So a lot of times, that stillness allows you to kind of connect with relatives. So that's my favorite thing is the stillness.
Oh, I love that part about it as well. It's just like this amazing quiet and something to be said about the even just how the sky just seems to be bigger during the winter time. It's my favorite time to really do that reset because I notice I don't push myself as hard. I know that I have to work with and not against Mother Nature and all of her gifts. Like I don't need to be out on that black ice in my whip cruising around all fast. I'm just gonna stay home. And just like
Yeah.
really kind of I think also as I embrace entering into what I consider more of a transition into my elderhood is just more just kind of reclaiming how I choose to rest and reset and when I choose to do that and then just being like so much more unapologetic about it. I think a big part of that comes with the reality that as matriarchs and as women, we're always just go and go and go. And I was just on a recent flight, and I've heard this analogy so many different times, but you hear those very critical instructions for if your plane is in trouble, you take the oxygen mask and you put it on yourself before you help someone else, even your own child. And I'm like, no, 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 that just feels like a conflict that you would feel like you have to help somebody else first before you can help yourself. And it was somebody that really clearly explained if you don't have the oxygen, you're not going to be able to help another. That was really impactful for me to hear during the time that I heard it. And interestingly and ironically enough, it happened to be during the winter time when I heard that. And so I really think of seasons as that, like we have to make sure for not just our own self preservation, but so that we can keep doing for others, that we're being more mindful about how we heal ourselves while we're healing others. It's a tough one sometimes as Indigenous women because we're pulled in so many different directions. So thank you so much for sharing that, because I do know that it is also a season of vulnerability, emotionally and spiritually as well, because that storytelling season is so alive and so vibrant. Can you just share with everybody? I mean, I know we talked about that being like the season and a good time for that, but just because of the work that you do with indigenous plant medicines, not sharing any specific medicines, but like as you work on integrating, winter into that natural reset, how aromatherapy is a part of that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people that know me or have seen me or have seen some of the work that I do, they're always like, "Well, how do you do it? Like, you're like you said, you're such a powerhouse, and you're taking names, or all the different sayings. Like, I've got so many I've heard about myself, and I'm like, wow." And I realize that a lot of times when you are someone who is in the public and you're doing work in humanity, whatever that level is, people idolize you, right? There's the idea of who you are, right? And then if you do something wrong, you're quickly demonized. You're not really humanized. For me, it's very important for me to take care of myself. Just like you said, the oxygen mask. And a lot of times, when you are such a doer for so many people, it is hard to wrap your mind around, like, what, how can I take care of me? That's selfish. Like, that's wrong. Like, I've got to help other people, but you can't do anything if you have nothing in your cup. You can't do anything if you don't have anything in your medicine bag. You can't do anything if you have an empty cabinet. You can't do anything if your leg is like twisted or broke. You can't heal. So the wintertime is a really good time, I think, to do that, because with all the different plant medicines, or we say Wamina Tampiog, which in our language means all of my relations. Those plant medicines are a part of those relations. You know, and oftentimes, as we're getting closer to winter, usually starting around like August through September and sometimes early October is a really good time to start your harvest and foraging some of those medicines to begin to process through November and December, so that you are stocked January through April, right? And a lot of times those plant medicines are not necessarily just because they taste good, or, like those cranberries, they just, they add just like a great flavor, or apples or pumpkins, all these different types of traditional foods, berries, all of that. Like, they have purpose too, not just flavor, right? They're not just something for pleasure. They were created from creator with a purpose, right? And there's a story that came along with each of those plants, right? And when we spend time throughout the spring and the summer, hiking or paddling or swimming, or, in the yard or on the trails or wherever all those botanicals are, you should be connecting with those relatives, right? And when it is time to go and harvest and spend the time to gather those plant medicines in whatever way, you are able, you're making those offerings to those relatives and thanking them for their purpose, right? And that is when they begin to work with you for what you both are creating, for them to be in use of, your intentions for that. And so, a lot of the scientists and the doctors, and, it's really commonly spoken now in public health, is seasonal depression, right? Most of the times we usually see that like after the holidays, because there is this your serotonin is like increased around like, Halloween, quote unquote, Thanksgiving, quote unquote, and Christmas, quote unquote, right? And for most people, it could be, the the winter solstice, and it could be, our traditional gatherings and our harvest times and things like that. But at the same time, it's important to realize that that is also the tradition of gathering for storytelling and family and whatnot. We now live in a day and age where people are alone, around this time. The summers are over with. You're not going to the beaches. You're not going to all these different huge swanky events. So you find yourself having this quote unquote seasonal depression because you have to sit still. Everybody's gathering with their own families or maybe not. And so that is a really good time to really connect with those plant medicines. Sometimes just working with them, processing them. And so aromatherapy, I'm just kind of getting to the meat of the question. But aromatherapy has this beautiful way of adding, um, allowing you to breathe it in. Because yes, there's a smell, right? And in cannabis, you say terpenes, but terpenes exist in all botanicals, and that's a whole different conversation. Um, but when you begin to breathe that in, you begin to actually really physically and spiritually connect with that plant. It's like your first interaction. It's not a topical, it's not being consumed. You're essentially like connecting with it, its breath and your breath, you're sharing that. And I think that that's very important because when you understand what essences that those particular plants hold and what their purpose is, then you can go to that plant and say, I need cleansing. So you're going to find something that provides that cleansing. You right? If you are saying, I need something to help with, calming me, you're going to find the right medicines to do that. And sometimes, and many times, they work together, those plants. So to know what relatives are very close and they work together to help create, I don't even want to say the word potency, but to create that bundle, if you will, for you. They know how to work together, and there are many of us that are still learning, and there are many of us that have been passed down oral history, oral knowledge, but there are also many of us that do this work, on a day to day, not just in the winter time. So when I say that I'm preparing for the winter, I'm preparing to be able to have, those relatives with me in my times, when I got to put on my oxygen mask. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I think that's a big part of that stress management component. But as you were talking, it made me really think about how I embrace my own personal wellness and stress management, aromatherapy. Sometimes smells trigger positive and negative reactions. And as you mentioned, like with seasonal affective disorder, my mother was very much impacted by that until she started trying to find more of that balance between the stress management, sleep, nutrition, and movement. And I think the movement is a big part of that whole wellness because in the wintertime, it's cold outside. You just want to be sitting by the fire and you find your body just not necessarily moving as much, which is why I really am embracing stretching, which is so needed in my life. But with, that stress management component, just a whiff of like lavender, most people like, they think of lavender as something that is gonna help you wind down. I smell it and it kind of gives me a little boost, a little jolt. Like it gives me a little bit of an adrenaline rush in aromatherapy smell. I put that homegirl sister in my bathtub and I'm ready to crash out. And
Yeah.
so you think of even just that the purpose of time of day, time of season, time of year, that there really is a time for everything, including the movement, the
Yeah.
movement. And so I think of the work that you do in rematriating the waterways and the pathways of your ancestral trade routes and trade routes, and about how even the work that you're doing now is so intentionally planning for the movement when you take up the water, when it is safe, when it is the cultural time for you to be on the water. So, can you just tell our audience just a little bit more about um, water and movement, and about how that is such a critical component to maintaining those connections with your ancestors?
Absolutely. One thing I'm going to add to the aromatherapy part is because a lot of people could be listening and saying, well, I just don't have time. Oils. Oils are the best things. When I go to a hotel, I always have oil and I douse it all in the shower, right? And therefore, I allow that shower to steam with whatever that blend is, and so if I go on stage sometimes, and sometimes it's not because I'm nervous, it's just like, okay, I just need something for me, right? And so I will take that oil and, have it right in my hand so that I can smell it when I'm holding the microphone or something like that. Like that's just a little tip for us
Yes.
hardworking people.
Some of us be getting ourselves 86 by trying to burn up our sage and our sweetgrass in places where it's not culturally
Yeah.
appropriate to be burning.
Yeah, and there's sage oil and there's cedar oil. Yeah, so I would say the water. So as you were saying that, as you were talking about that, I was connecting myself with all the water in the world, or at least with all the water in where I am right now in the Northeast. And my mind goes to how the temperature is beginning to drop and how the water is starting to slow itself down. The water itself. I've never really talked about this ever. But so bear with me, listeners, as I'm kind of just talking through spirit right now. But the when the water begins to slow down, all around, like for me, I'm just thinking about the water that's underneath the ground that we cannot see, those freshwater springs that still exist, and how, somehow water always finds a way to the ocean. It always finds a way to the ocean, right? And so you've got creeks, you've got streams, you've got rivers, you've got it all, and it's all connected. All the water in the entire world is all connected. So when it rains, when it snows, when that runoff comes from mountains, you can see, like, even after the rain, immediately after the rain, what are those birds doing? They're going to find where that water drop is, and they're going to drink that water drop. Like, even just the tiniest one, sometimes, like, when that snow starts to melt, you can see the birds just on top of the leaves. Like, water is so, 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 so important. And so I would say that, in some of the work that I do, is that I'm consciously every single moment when I ever think about water, I'm thinking about how pure it was created from creator, right? And then I also think about our responsibility and how our responsibility is to help keep it that way, right? We're not the purifiers. We are the preservers. We are the protectors. We are the prayer of that, and so I often think about that, and then my mind goes to um, the pollution and the hardships and all of the things that are becoming very challenging. And then that goes into needing to tap into my oil to calm myself down because that begins to trigger me. It's a very traumatic, experience when you have such a connection to it. But what I have been able to do is be a part of that cleansing process with water, because water is the spirit, so when we can reconnect in our ancestral trade routes and our ancestral waterways, and then communicating with water or just being in water or just having that pure happiness and joy and love, um, that pure energy with water, water remembers that. Water is a conductor. It conducts energy. It passes energy. And so when we have that good feeling and we, share that with the water, that does help in many different ways. And so I try in a lot of my work to share this experience and these thoughts and this feeling and this energy with as many humans as possible, right? So that they too can reconnect in that and maybe think twice about small conscious things around water, preserving it, maybe not using so much of it, right? Using all of it, not just throwing water bottles out, and making small, subtle, conscious choices. It really does help. And so when I think about the winter, I think about the water allowing itself to go into a stillness and people staying away from it so that it also can renew and go through that beautiful cycle. I think that that is such a beautiful thing. And then when that springtime hits, that water is so sweet, it's so fresh, right? We live here on the ocean where right now, if you take a ferry from Long Island to Connecticut, you can see that the water is not moving so much like it would in June, but it's moving like this. It's very strong, and so if you're getting storms around this time of year, it's very interesting to see how the water moves, and it's teaching us to slow down, slow down. So yeah, about water.
Oh, I love listening to you talk. I'm just gonna just put this out there into the universe. You are my little sister, but sometimes I feel like you're my elder because I learn from you all of the time. I think probably one of the biggest lessons was that when you put out 50 plant medicines, indigenous oral history and perspectives, that was a bold move. And
Mm,
I know that you probably got some pushback, even from some of your own relatives, maybe even from some of your own family members. You're
yeah.
oversharing, that's ours. And
Mhm.
then I think about like we are in this time and place where I mean, we can't exile everybody back out. We can't deport everybody back out so we can do our healing. So you embrace this concept that there are these 50 plant medicines. I'm not going to share everything. I'm going to share these specific plant medicines that are readily available in Mother Earth's kitchen for us all to heal with. So will you just share with us just a little bit
Yeah.
about 50 plant medicines and specifically your role in and your vision and where that was about humanity. That wasn't just about indigenous communities. While they were our Turtle Island medicines,
Yeah.
kind of your intentionality behind the shared responsibility that we all have for Mother Earth,
Yeah.
even the colonizers,
Yeah. I'm really glad that you.
especially.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really, really, I'm so glad that you proposed this question in the way that you did, right? Because it is a very big topic in Indian country. Are oversharing? Are we oversharing? That's only for us. That's only for this. There's only for that. But if we go all the way back to when the first red man was created, the first being was created, Creator instructed us to be stewards of our relatives in the lands. The Creator gave us divine instructions straight from Creator to us as the red being to take care of the plants, to take care of the land, to take care of the water. There were other instructions that were given to the other beings, the other three beings. There were other instructions. But those were not our instructions. Whether they have forgotten them, abandoned them, whatever their reason is, our instructions remain to be ours. But our instructions is not just for us to take care of the land and not just for us to take care of the water. So I feel like we're living in a time where it is urgent that those wisdom keepers share what we can, because we can't share everything, because the world isn't ready for all of that bundle. They're not ready for it. But at the same time, there is an urgency. I mean, we have whales that are washing up ashore, right? At an alarming rate, right? We have soap plants that used to grow along our ponds that are very hard to find. You don't see as many raspberries, that you used to. You don't see as many blackberries or huckleberries that you used to. The acorns are suffering, right, for many different reasons. I mean, the salmon, right, have been endangered for years at this point. Keystone species, not just to the Klamath River, but to the world, when you think about it. So if
Yes.
we could just share 50 plant medicines, if we could just share 50 of them, and we can just share a small paragraph that includes how to identify them. Do they like meadows? Do they like grassy areas? Do they like wetlands? Are they tall? When to harvest them? Is it the summer? Is it the spring? What part of the plant do we harvest? The leaf, the root, the tree, the flower, the pollen, the seed? What part is to be harvested? Is it good for your liver? Is it good for your kidneys? Is it good for arthritis? Is it good for headaches? Is it good for menstruation? What are those instructions of that plant? The oral history sometimes is meant to be shared because that's the story of your relationship to that plant, to that relative. That's yours. My oral history and your oral history with me is very sacred, right? You're my relative. There's so many different ways that we have connections outside of this, male dominated industry. We have so many different connections through other relatives that care about the plants, that care about, the lands. And that's our oral history shared, right? Now, if we choose to share that with the world, that's because that's a love that we have and we want everyone to feel that love. That's to me what oral history is. Now, some things I think, when it came to writing that book, my brother actually, Reginald Bullock, he was the one to say, Chenae, you have all this information and people should access it by the click of a button. That was what he said. This was during the pandemic. And because he sees me doing plant tours and plant walks and things, he saw me doing all those different kinds of things. And I was just like, yeah, you're right. You're right. He's like, I mean, what if you did like an ebook or a digital product? And I was like, you know what? That'd be kind of cool. So one day I just sat down and I literally jotted down like at least 50 plants off the top of my head. And then I went in and I just started writing about each of them. Not too much, but just like, a paragraph, and some of them have some pretty substantial histories that are quote unquote American history. For example, sassafras, right? Sassafras is a word for in our language, it means sassafras. It translates to sassafras. And when that plant was discovered discovered as in like they discovered how we used it. When that plant by the colonizers, when they discovered how we use that plant, for strong, potent medicines, right? If someone is really, really, really sick, that root is cooked. And when it's cooked down, it has a very sweet flavor to it. So much so that they began to trade and harvest a bountiful amount of sassafras and they exported it over to Europe. And that's where they got the flavor root beer. And so that became a very popular plant because they love that sweet flavor, when you go over to Europe. So that's just one of the 50 mini plants. But to me, that history right there should be shared because it also shows the extraction of the medicine, and how, and if you look at today, it is it is illegal to essentially sell a sassafras actual root beer. We now have a flavor that's artificial because it is listed, with the FDA as I'm not sure which particular schedule. I don't want to get it all wrong. Like it is outlawed to use. You have to know what you're doing within it. And so within our sovereign rights, we have that ability to utilize that medicine. And I think that is oral history in itself because they learned it from us, but they were never able to take that knowledge and relationship that we have with those plants, because those trees grow bountiful on Shinnecock. They grow all over there. They don't just grow in shrubs and little saplings. They grow in giant trees, just like this beautiful background behind us. And they have tree canopies, those sassafras. So when we harvest those, we're getting really strong medicines, and that's something to bring into your homes now, so that you have throughout the wintertime. So you have a strong source of vitamin C. But yeah, that book, it can be found online on moskehtuconsulting.com. And it's just an ebook. It's a great little read. But my intention was for people to be able to identify and see them. Because when you buy a tea bag or you get tea, you turn the back of it and it'll say cozy wintertime blend, or it'll say, sleepy time, or whatever it is. But you should
Move,
probably
move.
you should probably know what you're drinking, and not only know what you're drinking, you need to know what it smells like, and you need to know what it looks like, not just in the tea bag, but what does it look like in the wild? Because it could be growing right in your yard, and you're going every day into the store to buy the same tea that grows right there, echinacea, elderberries, all of that. So that's yeah, I'm really glad you proposed the question the way you did.
And I'm blown away by the answer. So you're telling me this relative of ours, sassafras, a botanical, is being treated like another one of our relative
Oh, yeah.
botanicals as a drug to be demonized. And I get part of, there's this whole can of worms thing, with what happens when Western science gets their hands and tries to isolate specific properties in a medicine that was meant to stay whole, but
Hmm.
maybe whole in certain seasons or part in certain times. Um, it's just wild. It's just wild.
You really can't tackle it all, right? But you can do your part, and if your part is just being a good human first, you know, and that is universal. And so I think we're living in a time where we need to all remember, going back to whatever creation stories all of humanity has, that it's really love and kindness that we're supposed to share for each other in all living things. But there's so much trapped trauma in a lot of people that they have yet to release that, and they're unleashing, so much. And that is something that I just try to stay clear from, and just try to continue to do the work. And I guess that's, it does beat me up. I am human. Things do hurt, severely hurt, like really to the core hurt, right? But I lean on my teachings about those plant medicines, about the work. I lean on that and try to really lean as much on that as I can, and that does help me, and it does strengthen me to stand back up and lift my head, high if I can. But I'm also very conscientious about whatever this sort of, I'll say, disease that has spread in humanity, and it's spreading very fast. I'm trying to, navigate through that every single day, but I don't want that to stop me from doing what I was created here to do. And so I just am constantly, like I said, leading on those teachings that I shared in the early part of our talk here. That is something that I think that I can carry that with me every day, and the more I can share what that is to humanity, I feel like it might help them to navigate through these challenges that we are constantly faced with. But the stillness helps in the winter. It definitely helps to for us to slow down, and just to really start to love on ourselves and recharge and renew. You know?
Yes, sister. Definitely leaning into the winter months specifically for the quiet, for the stillness, for the smells that come with this season. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your reflections on how specifically support your mind, body, and spirit healing during this time of the season. And I have a feeling like this is going to be like to be continued kind of a conversation.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that all of our viewers are going to be like, we want some more of that Chenae Bullock. So
Yeah.
Chenae, on behalf of her Many Voices Foundation and just all of the work that you do for the next generations, to plant those seeds for them and for our Mother Earth, the restoration, repair, and reconciliation work. Hatsiya for being a guest on her Many Voices Foundation today.
Thank you.
Until next time, listeners, and again, if you want Chenae back, hit up our Gaia Gossip backend and let us know. Happy winter.
Thank you again for joining us at Her Many Voices Gaia Gossip. Remember, whatever you do for another, you do for yourself. For more information, head over to hermanyvoices.org to learn more about other programs and get involved. From all of us at Gaia Gossip and Her Many Voices Foundation, thank you, and until next time.